All right, well, it's fair time, so probably due for our traditional video here at the Jackson County Fair. So we'll go take a look around. We'll go up and start with the feature tractor this year, and we'll do that right after this. Alright, welcome back. If you haven't seen my videos before, I'm Ross the Oliver Man, and this year's feature tractor is Ford, Ferguson, Massey-Ferguson, and you know, the like, all of the brands in there. Decided to lump some together so that there was hopefully enough to fill the front area here, although there's still room for more, but that's the way it is. So let's just pick a side and have a look, I suppose. So here we have a NAA, which is the same as like my Jubilee. It was a Jubilee for 1 year in '53, and then after that it continued on as the NAA. You can see the emblem is different than like on the one I've got. And then we have the 871 Gold. I assume this is a demonstrator tractor. I don't know if it's an actual original or if it's like a tribute tractor, but kind of something neat and different. Selecto Speed, which was basically like the power shift of its day. I think that when they were making these to start with, I've heard stories there was a lot of trouble with them and guys converted them over to 5 speeds, but it's neat to see one still in action. I don't know, do we want to stick with Fords first and then do, let's follow that theme maybe. So here we have a 600, which is basically the same body style tractor as the NAA. It's got a 5-speed transmission. I don't know what other changes they made. I'm sure there were some. Offset 2000, which I think this is the neatest little tractor. Goofy looking, but it's kind of neat. I mean, and a diesel no less. We've seen this before. It's been around this area. Most of these tractors have. An 800. Another 5-speed tractor, I believe. I'm no Ford expert, but chime in the comments if I get it wrong. 740 tricycle. That's another kind of unusual thing you don't see very often. You see 50 built like that to one of these tricycles. So a 960 with front weights, which I assume to be original front weights, and 4100, which that one was on the tractor drive in that video a few weeks ago, so we know it's a good runner. Jump back up here to the Massey-Harris. Consequently, years ago, like in the era of the 60, 70 Olivers, Hart Pars, even back that far, the dealer was also a Massey dealer, and it was a place called Cordis Hardware, but they sold Oliver and Massey-Harris, Ferguson, whatever. So we have a 33. And 44, which is the one I think that most people think of when they think of Massey-Harris. I think I have this toy at home too. I have to look. It's got a little pedal tractor. And another 44 belongs to Dad's neighbor. I saw this tractor growing up quite frequently. He did use it in tractor pulls for a while. That's why the wide tires, chrome stack. And then we have another one of his tractors, which they used on the farm. And I never realized it looks like it's original paint, but a 65. They had another one that was a lot rougher shape with a loader on it that they used, but that's kind of neat. We have a 44 special. I'm not sure the difference between a 44 and a 44 special, if it was just like the next year's, you know, updated. Don't know. Not an expert. We have a 50 Massey-Ferguson, which is owned by the same guy who has those front wheel assist Olivers I've worked on before. This was his dad's that he bought new. It's fixed up pretty good. I've done a little bit to it over the years. Ignition tune-up and stuff. We need to work on the steering and stuff on it, but it's a pretty nice little tractor. 35 Ferguson, which I think this one was on the tractor drive the other day. Can't remember. But it's definitely been in like the videos of that show up here. As was this 35 Ferguson. A little bit different. Tan colored hood. Here we have a Ferguson 35 Deluxe, and it looks like it could be bought. Again, I'm not sure what the differences were, other than maybe it's just different years and they updated them by calling them something different. Don't know. This is a 40. I think Grandpa said his dad had one of these for a little bit, but it wasn't very good, maybe. I don't know. Interestingly enough, this one has that seat, like what I was talking about. Looks exactly like what's on the 500. So I'm wondering if the seat that's on the 500, or if David Brown bought the seats from the same supplier that Ferguson did, or if one of the other made the seats and bought it from the other one. But it looks just darn near identical. I mean, the same exact thing. This is kind of an unusual tractor. I don't think I've seen very many of these in my life. Again, not sure what's the deal. It's got a high-low, I see. But kind of an interesting color combo. Here's a 135 Massey-Ferguson. I believe this one belongs to the CT Farm boy, if you look at his channel. He bought this a while back and has been using it, doing different stuff. So there we have that. It's again got the same style seat like the 500. So that must have been a thing, you know, like a supplier made those or something and everybody used them. Here we have a 165. This one is owned by my cousin who's got the John Deere combine and does some harvest work for me. I'm not sure where exactly they got this. They had like a 135 and they traded it for a 2-cylinder John Deere, and then he acquired this somewhere. I can't remember where he said, but it's kind of unusual too because it's, you know, a higher up tractor. I don't know if they all were that way as a 165 or if this is kind of the same deal like my 2020 John Deere, where it's the high utility and they made them in different sizes. But it's kind of an interesting tractor. And then back here we have a, I believe it's a Steiger in Ford colors, but an FW30 with a 903 Cummins. This was a local tractor, and they just bought it not too awful long ago from the family that owned it all the time, and I think they had two of them, and they kept one. The other one has a greater blade on it, I believe. But I like old four-wheel drive tractors, as you know. I think they're pretty neat, and I don't think a lot of people really in the collecting world appreciated them for years, because more likely just because it was hard to transport and they took up a lot of space to store. But there's a lot of times you can buy these old things for very reasonably priced. And if it's built like the one, I've worked on one of these later ones, it's just got like a truck transmission down in here. Yeah. So, and it is quite the endeavor to get that out of here. We took it out of here. It took 3 people. We took it out through the cab door. So, you know, if you have to work on one of these, I don't necessarily recommend that for a good time, but do what you got to do. But this is a neat old tractor. I think it, the color scheme, I know it's just the same like the Steigers and you see them all over, but when everybody put their own paint on it, it kind of made them interesting. FW30. The same people that own that four-wheel drive own the rest of these county tractors, so we'll look at them in a minute, but we'll just go down the line here. This is my neighbor. He's got an Allis-Chalmers Collection. You've seen some of his before. A D10. Kind of a cute little feller there. Looks like all the bigger ones, but it's not. It's small. WD-45 wide front, power steering, no less. That's probably one of the more pleasant WD-45s to drive with power steering. Magna-Track. Pretty sure that this has been here before, so we may have seen it on a previous video, but that's kind of a neat little thing. I mean, probably not too many of them survived. As soon as they were wore out, guys probably junked them, so pretty neat to see one fixed up. And then this thing, which I think is just the neatest ever, an Imco Power Horse. A tractor made where you could drive it like a horse with ropes and hook your horse tools to it. You could even yell whoa. As long as you pulled on the ropes, it would whoa. But an Allis-Chalmers B power unit, I believe, bolted to their own transmission case or what have you. Pretty neat. And we have the county tractors. I think they have a few more too they're working on, but this is basically like a Ford that's been converted, or I don't know how much Ford built and they built. I would assume that Ford built the engine and main transmission. Well, they built that part because it says Ford. So, and then the other place made the front axle, I'm thinking. I'm not real sure how this goes. And I've seen them drive it, but I never really paid attention either to how they articulate or whatever. This one might just be a, I think the front wheel steer on that one. Maybe that's the way they're all made. I was thinking that some of them were articulated, but maybe not. 754 diesel. again, basically a Ford tractor. You can see it even says Ford there. So and then this Mirror Hill, there you go. When ordering spares, please quote the serial number. 6-cylinder diesel. That's pretty neat. And then we have this, which I think is neat. I don't think I've ever seen this one before out of their collection. I don't know what number it is, just a 4600 with a front wheel drive axle put on it. Here we have a 210 Allis-Chalmers, which is owned by the guys that owned the dealer that I worked at several years back. They did not sell the tractor new, but they found out about it and recently bought it, got it running, drove it home, and they've been playing around with it, doing different stuff. It's pretty neat. Very original tractor. You can just barely see the sticker. It says Hunley from Austin was the dealer that sold it. And we have a B, and if this is the same one I'm thinking of, they took it in on trade years ago, like when I was just a little feller, and they're you know, I don't know what they really, if they took it and kept it for collecting or if it had a little mower on it or something, but I remember that the other guy I worked with said, he's about the same age as me, and said that they would get that thing started and ride it all around the parking lot. So if this is the same one I'm thinking of, I think it is. But anyway, and I believe that they are crank start only. So got a magneto, so that's very possible. And then they have a G. They got this when I worked there from some guy in town, and we pulled it home behind my service truck, and I mean, we aired up the tires and it was back there just hopping all the way back to the shop. But they got her fixed up good now. It's rained here a bunch and everything looks like it's got dust on it now, but yeah, it's pretty neat. I drove it over here the other day. They had it in a different spot, and I was afraid it was going to get hit with the gate over there, so I drove it over here. It's kind of an interesting thing to drive. You don't have a lot of room. If you were much heavier than I am, I don't think you could drive it, because the old steering wheel was right in your gut. But pretty neat. WD-45 was fixed up by a friend of mine, and then he ended up selling it back to the son of the guy who had owned it new, so it's back in its original family again. 620 Deere. I don't know that I've ever seen this tractor before here, so it might be a new one here at the fair. Of the 2 cylinders, if I had to own another one, I do like the 20 series with the coloring, with the yellow stripe. The 30 series was just yellow all the way down, and I just don't like that as well for whatever reason. I like the extra band of green, I guess. But a 720 diesel with a pony start would be the one I'd want if I could find one reasonable. Here we have a C. Farmall C. The 1256, which you've seen, it was on the tractor drive for a while. I think they cut out after the first round of rain and headed for home. I don't blame them, because we got wet. But you've seen this one several times before. Guy bought it new, sold it, and then several years ago was able to buy it back. Had it all fixed up. 40/20 gas, no less. Probably don't see as many gas as you do diesels. I know a lot of guys who've bought them put diesels in them, but that makes, to me, gas ones are probably getting worth more than diesels in some regard, because there's not as many. So it's fixed up pretty nice. I'll have to ask this guy. I don't know if it's a family tractor or what's the story on it, but looks good. Super M, which I believe has been on its original farm its whole life. I'm not real sure, but they got it fixed up really good. An MTA, Super MTA, which is owned by the original family. I think it was bought new by their uncle, maybe. So, another family tractor. Then we start in with stuff that I brought. VAC case, which you will have seen a video on getting this revived. I believe you will have seen it by now. We still have work to do. I ordered new points, so they should be here sometime. We can try to make it run more better. The goal is to have everything where it will run if you jump on and push the button, so we can just use it. Here we have the 500, and looking at it, I'm wondering, why are we so... Did some kid mess with it and make it leak? Or did it just decide to do that because it's at the fair? Stuff like that happens at the fair. Shoot. Well, we'll worry about that later when we go to get it home. It's still almost full. I have never put fuel in this tractor, I don't think, if I recall. So, yeah, very fuel efficient. You know all about it. You've seen plenty stories. Super 55. And my 60. And 70. All stuff you've seen before in videos. We have this 601 Ford, which I have no idea whose it is. It showed up one night and I didn't see who brought it in. So looks like it is a still in use little tractor wherever it comes from. That's interesting. He made him a little I know what he did there. He made that so that it would hold the plow up in the air and it didn't drift down. So that's kind of a clever idea, I suppose. But yeah, it's got a lot going on here. I don't know what exactly is taking place, but I don't know why there's a... Oh, I see. He's got... I see what's happening. I understand now. We've got our regular ignition system bypassed, and then you start it with this, I guess. That must have been on an auction recently. Interesting. Here we have a 2010 John Deere, which is fixed up very nicely. Consequently, the 2010, I believe, was the one that was considered to be the worst tractor ever built by John Deere, and you don't often see them on at shows or whatnot. I don't know what the deal was, why, but even the Deere mechanics have told me that it wasn't their best work, and I don't know what the reason was. If they just hadn't got it all quite figured out yet. I didn't realize that they had the Roll-O-Matic on these. So I'm guessing it was kind of a hybrid between 2-cylinder parts and making the new generation stuff, and they probably just didn't quite have her figured out yet. But this one's fixed up excellently. I think it's kind of cute, actually, with the little flat top fenders and what have you. So pretty neat, really. I mean, like I said, you don't hardly ever see one because a lot of collectors don't want to fool with one, but I don't know. I would probably own one of those if it was reasonable. Here is a B that is owned by the original family, and we were talking the other day, the other guy that brought it, and I think it is a 44 model. You can see that it is slightly different than mine in many ways. The frame is different. This is probably more of a wartime era frame, I believe, where they used like flat plate steel. It's electric starting after the fact, basically a hand start tractor that they converted to electric start at the factory, I think, by just putting a ring gear around the flywheel. Starter mounted up top. My starter's mounted underneath and everything's enclosed. Had the extra starting tank so that they could run it on like kerosene, and then they added this piece of the dash to fill in the thing, and I think the battery is underneath here. So it does have the same rounded fenders like what I've got right over here, we'll look at in a minute. But yeah, this is another family tractor that they owned. It's got a different style lift. I think it's more like a mechanical lift, but it has the same rock shaft deal. And then instead of having one stick and 6 gears, you have 3 gears and then a high-low. So you get the same speeds, but it's 2 sticks to do it. Then here we have the little neighbor boy's 60, the one that he was pulling that disc with that I showed that video clip of. He got it all washed up and brought up here. So yeah, it's a runner. We see him playing with it out there sometimes. I'm not sure what everything does here exactly, if this is hydraulics or what. I don't really know what's going on. I'm not up on Deere's. I assume that's what it is. Still got the power troll like the 2 cylinders do. Oh, that's interesting. Interesting. Then we have a row of tractors here owned by my cousins with the John Deere combine. Same as that 165 Massey up there. They have quite a collection of 2 cylinders. We may have to go over there sometime and film their collection and have them explain everything of what they have. But this is an MT, and they bought it kind of in pieces. I think it was somebody else's project, and he just sold it to them, and they got it all fixed up. I know they've got, I think, a plow for it, and they've got cultivators, because I think I've seen them cultivate with it before. So these are sweet running little tractors. Like I said, I had one for a short while. I traded it for my 66, but that little vertical 2-cylinder motor is a sweet runner and starts easy. Then we have this 520 with a original loader on it. I can't remember what they said, is it a 50, 9 loader, 45 loader. And they work for Deere, and a story I got was on a service call one time, he saw that the guy had one of these loaders in the scrap pile, and he just made the comment, and he said, I got one of those loaders too. And the guy said, yeah, we had it for years on a tractor. And he said, we even got a grader blade that fits on it. And he said, really? He said, do you still have it? And they said, yeah, it's somewhere in the scrap pile. So they dug in the scrap pile and got this original blade that fits on the loader frame. Pretty rough, but it's super neat. I mean, I don't think you see that very much at a show either. And you look at it, and it's actually made in a way where you could flip the brackets around, and then you could have the blade angled. So that's pretty neat. I have a feeling if you had it angled, it was probably pretty hard on the loader frame, but interesting nonetheless. This tractor, as far as I know, the story that I understood was he bought it on an auction, and the auction was a farm that was basically growed up in weeds. And the story, if I understand it right, years ago, the old man killed himself, you know, for whatever reason, depression, I don't know. And everything just sat there untouched, like a time capsule almost. And this tractor is probably, you know, practically new. It has like 400 hours on it, 458. And I would say that that is probably accurate. And unfortunate situation, you know, but you got an almost brand new tractor because the guy wouldn't have used it very much whenever that happened. It was not very long, you know, 458 hours after he'd bought this. So I think that if the building had been in a little bit better shape that it was in, it probably would have stood the elements a little better. I think he's going to repaint it, and I don't blame him. It's not quite a good enough survivor, in my opinion, to leave it original. It's just a little too rough. If it was just a shade, like the next shade better, it would probably be one of those where you didn't want to touch it. But kind of like my Super 88, it's kind of on the border of do you fix it or don't you? But I like them painted up, so I don't know. I think he does too, and that's probably what he'll do. I'm just noticing this loader. It's almost like a quick attach loader. That's kind of neat. Back in the day, just looks like pull a pin on each side, and you could set this up out of there. So that's pretty interesting. Here we have their 720. This is, I believe, what they traded that 135 for that they had. And it was already in this shape. I mean, they didn't do anything to it other than just they've used it. I don't know. They'll probably repaint it at some point. I don't know if this is really like the decals that this would have had, or if this is like, I don't know. They just don't look the same as like those decals, but the slantedness, I don't know. It's a good usable tractor, and they like me, they like to use them, so you don't want to fix them up with too nice a paint job, or you'd never want to use them. So I would say this one will be kind of like what I do. You work on the ones that don't run first, and then when you got time, you come back and do cosmetic stuff or whatever. So it looks pretty good. So here we have a 70 diesel pony start, which they got from an equipment jockey. I think it was a non-runner, or maybe you could pull it and start it, but you couldn't, the pony wouldn't run. But they got her now where it'll start up on its own. And it's another one that kind of has me puzzled. It almost looks like it's an older repaint. Somebody years ago tried to repaint it and never got it done, and it wore partially off because we were looking at this. They put the wrong decal on the wrong side, so you can see the diesel from the original and then the one that they had over top. I don't know, kind of odd, but I would say it's an old repaint. But I think these are neat, any of them with the little pony engine, using a 4-cylinder gas to start a 2-cylinder diesel. 3-point hitch, power troll. This, consequently, while we're talking about it, is, I think, almost exactly what I was talking about that Grandpa had on that B. And they put it on, you see how it bolts on, and then it has this top bar, and somehow this top bar or something is what scrunched in that light and battery box on the back of the tractor. But whatever, that is in the past. Here we have some Allis-Chalmers. I don't know who this belongs to, but a CA high crop, I suppose. Oh, there, it's got a name on it, but I don't think I've ever seen this tractor before. But I know they made something like this. I remember hearing or seeing something about the place that converted them over to high crops. WC styled, another family tractor purchased new by their great-grandfather. But WCs started out unstyled with the flat front. My great-grandpa had one of those. And then they went to this styling, which was somewhat like the WD. I'm not sure that the pieces all interchange, but they look very similar. But you can definitely see the differences on the, you know, the transmission and stuff. Long lever. So, and the unstyled ones had handbrakes only. I think they had a foot brake or a foot clutch and a handbrake on each fender, so you couldn't really you could stop or you could steer, but you couldn't do both. And I'm not sure, maybe this one's been converted over. I don't know, maybe they made that later on or as a kit to change the handbrakes to foot brakes. I don't know, but I know the unstyled ones had handbrakes only, as evidenced from this. And I bet that is a kit that somebody made, because this one also has foot brakes, and they did not originally. But here is an open front WC. And being owned by that same family, they were pretty good fabricators, so I would say that they made the foot brakes on both of the tractors, which is good because that made it a lot more handy to drive, probably. First tractor purchased by one of their relatives. We have a little B with a mower. I'm pretty sure he still uses it. Mows with it. I've thought of doing something like that with the 60 or something. I actually thought about buying a mower like that and then give me an excuse to buy like a Super 44 to mow my yard with, but someday I'll get to that. I've owned some of those mowers before and resold them. Large pulley on your PTO and a long belt. Well, we're back to the fun trick of the GoPro shutting off, so hopefully we got all of that footage saved. If not, I'll come back and refilm it. Let's get this short row. Cockshutt 35 Blackhawk was another tractor in this guy's family, and he said he just got it back last year, so that's pretty neat. You don't often see one of these. Again, I think it was the updated series. I know they made like a golden arrow and a golden eagle. I'm not sure what the, I think they were the 6-cylinder ones, I don't know, but that's a pretty neat tractor. WD-45 wide front. Again, wide front is something that is not often seen. You probably see a dozen or more narrows for one wide. He drove it in here as a pretty good running tractor. 550 Cockshutt, which I have one home in pieces. It's actually over at Dad's. I need to go get it and start in on it. But another interesting tractor that you don't see very much anymore. They were kind of big around here because our co-op sold them in addition to Oliver later on. So I think there was probably some overlap in there because there were several of these 3-digit ones around. Mine is all tan, so yeah, that's that. Okay, I hope I don't miss any, because that one year I got distracted by talking to somebody and I forgot to film some. So we don't want to do that again. Over here we have a 60, a pair of 60s. They used to belong to my neighbor and he sold them to another collector. He's got several Olivers now, but a 60 row crop and the little 60 industrial. And I'm not sure if this is the one. My neighbor bought it on an auction, if this is the one I'm thinking of, and he had it shipped here by a shipping company where you like put it out for bids or whatever. Well, it took forever to get it. I mean, I think the guy got it wherever it was and then went out west before he came out here, and it was in neutral in the truck and it rolled back and forth and beat the tar out of itself in there. If this is the same one I'm thinking of, it might be he might have a 70 industrial and that was the one, but I was thinking it was this 60. But he had to go round and round with the trucking company to get some what do you want to call it, satisfaction or reimbursement or whatever because of that. But that's an interesting little tractor. You don't see a lot of industrials at shows, so, or at least at a county fair. Pretty neat. 60 standard. You've seen that before, owned by my neighbor. Old style 88 standard. We've seen that before. A 950 diesel. And there was some kind of story about one of these and I was gonna check it and I never did. So before I leave, I'm gonna take a picture of the serial number tag to see if it indeed was the one that somebody was looking for. There was a story, I can't remember how it went, of a 950 that Oliver pulled back in and they did something totally different to it, I can't remember, and then rebadged it and sold it as this. But and they said that it was last seen in Indiana, so that's why I was going to check this one and see if that was the one, but I don't remember. I'll have to find out that story again. 1650 Cockshutt. You saw this on the tractor drive as it was right behind me and would not stop. So anyway, I don't know if they worked on that since then or not, but another tractor you don't really often see, the Cockshutt version of this around here, because by that time they were all being sold as Olivers down here. So yeah, interesting. Here we have a 400 IH under a tent. And a WD-45 with a wide front, which I keep saying you don't see that very often, but there's 3 of them here at this fair, so that's interesting too. This is another basket case tractor where he bought it, I think, totally in pieces and has worked on it and put it back together. We have a little, what is that, a 110 round fender John Deere converted to tricycle. And we have a B Farmall. Again, I'm not up on the differences between the A, B, and C, but I'm sure you know, and that's all that matters. 2510, which Grandpa always said the guy who bought this had bought it at the same time that he bought the 2020. They were in the showroom at the same time, which obviously then this one would have been a leftover because it's from the previous series. The old man that owned it died, and he told me that this was not the same tractor that he originally bought. Said he could not find it back. He got so far tracing it down and he just couldn't find it, so he bought one just like it, fixed it up. He drove it for years, tractor drives and everything. Check out that thing. We'll have to see if we can see that going down the road here, and then we'll come back and talk about tractors. Rat rod right there. Anyway, easily distracted. So the old guy liked this, and he drove it on tractor drives and just all over. He brought it to the fair every year. So just like the one he had new, and his son brought it now. So good to see them continuing. Over here we have my little 2-cylinder John Deere B with no stickers on it. I was hoping they'd get here before the fair. They did not, and I wasn't gonna bring it, and then I thought, no, I spent so much time messing with it. All right, GoPro problems again. But as I was saying, my 2-cylinder B, I wasn't gonna bring it because the stickers hadn't got here yet, but I did spend so much time getting it ready and messing with it, I thought I'm taking it anyway. So, and I called the decal place, sent me an email, and I called him back, and I guess he got his wires crossed and he didn't know that I don't know what the deal was, but when he looked back through his records, he said, oh yeah, I mailed those the other day, so they should be here any day. They might be here today, in which case I'll stick them on here at the fair, I guess. But so that's interesting there. I don't know. Like I said, it's good from far, but far from good. So I suppose we'll just make the best of it. That rain last night must have been really dirty, because all these tractors are covered with trash, and they were not that way when I left yesterday. Here's a G, which I always thought was another one I guess I would own if I could find one. Just because it's a big horse. It has a deep sound. Pretty interesting. You used to see them in tractor pulls all the time. Very nice fixed up tractor. Belongs to the same people as that 2010. So pretty cool. But I think, if I'm right, that takes us through all of the tractors here. And later on tonight I will continue this video, and we will look at the gas engines and stuff while they're uncovered and running, because during the daytime nobody's here, everything's covered up. So we'll get that all running, and then we will go and yeah, we'll check out all that stuff. But I think I hit all the tractors, so I'll try to edit the footage and make sure, and if not, I'll come back and film and throw in whatever I missed. So there we have it. As always, if you enjoy my videos, give them a thumbs up. Leave a comment and tell me how dumb you think I am. Or if by some slim chance you liked it, say that. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.